Computer. Hey everybody, this is Mattie Cummins with Celebrations LLC, and I'm super excited today to have a conversation with my beautiful friend Summer Knight. And Summer is going to be doing some awesome work with our organization. And part of what is really important that we understand is that we are not just our brains, we are also our body. And although the brain and the body communicate and they do weird things, sometimes, in fact, often, as Summer is going to talk to us about, the body is doing things that we don't even know, and it's reacting first, in with all kinds of just chaos going on in our brains. So I'm going to ask Summer. Hi, Summer.
Hi.
I'm going to ask Summer to introduce herself and tell us a little bit about.
Oh yeah, my least favorite part, but as Mattie said, my name is Summer, and I'm really passionate about trauma and doing trauma work in the community. And so currently I am a co-director of a program under Macy United Way that helps people who have aged out of foster care system work to never being homeless again. And our primary focus is around trauma, because as we know, it's a lot of times we can get that job, we can get that relationship, we can do that certification, but why do things seem to fall apart? And what we've done is realize that the root cause of what's happening after we've experienced trauma is that that's what's keeping us out of these healthy relationships, having our lives seem to be going in a direction that we're wanting. And with that, I also do private trauma coaching on the side as part of the work I do, because as I said, I'm very passionate about doing trauma work.
And I just want to let people know that Summer and I go way back, and we actually worked in the neuro world together. So one of the reasons why Summer and I communicate so well is we speak the same language, and she's just my favorite people on the planet. So, Summer, talk to us a little bit about what is a trauma coach and what you do.
Yeah, so it's not the same as talk therapy. It's really finding out what are some of the behaviors that we have in our life, where are they stemming from, and it's not a good, bad behavior, right? All of our behaviors have served us. Sometimes the world will say this is a bad behavior, right? Or it's bad that you do these things. And what we do in trauma coaching is define the competency, the strength that, hey, you were able to survive by doing this behavior. Let's rewire that now so that we can use it for health in our life. And so that's a lot of the work that we do. Also, with trauma coaching, a lot of it is providing somatic work and some different techniques to help really connect your mind and body together, because they work together and sometimes they work against each other. But it's providing that space to be reconnected into the present and to ease anxieties and to ease different feelings that we hold that sometimes we don't know why. Why are we anxious? Why is this stressful? Why is this something that I'm afraid to do? And so a lot of it is rewiring of our brain. It's a lot of competency building and really just becoming present in our own bodies.
So let's talk a little bit about trauma, because I think people, and you and I have talked about this ad nauseum, but part of what I think is so challenging for people is you talk about trauma and they say, oh, I didn't go through anything as bad as that. Or I know someone that went through this and my stuff wasn't as bad, right? We hear trauma and we think it has to be this huge moment in time that something really, really awful happened. So can you talk to us a little bit about trauma and what trauma really is?
Yeah. And so, like what Mattie said, is how we've been explained. I say we collectively as a community and as a culture is that trauma is this really big bad event. And really, what trauma is how our body responds to any event. So, for example, when you're younger and your parents get divorced, how did you respond to that? How did your body? Did you start to not feel safe? Did you start to have, anxiety about the future? Did it affect how your relationships are? That's because for you, that was an event that created trauma in your body. So it's how your body responds, what it's shifted and shaped and changed in you when those things have happened. Divorces, sometimes it could be a bad experience in the healthcare system. It could be a bad experience at a job. It could be a broken relationship, or it could be something that's big, right? Or what we would consider bigger. I think in terms of trauma, we shouldn't compare and we shouldn't say, and I think we do this a lot. We unexplain why we should feel how we feel. And the reality is that things affect us. We're humans and our connections affect us. And when they affect us in a way that changes us to do things to constantly be in a protective mode, then we know we've had trauma. And
I
quite
think,
frankly, I think most people in some way or another have had some form of trauma.
yes. Yeah. It doesn't, trauma is it can often be just an unhealthy experience with family, which most of us grew up because our
Yep.
families aren't perfect, right? So I think trauma is an overreaching term about how our brain and our body interprets the world around us. And one of the things that I think is so fascinating about what you do and what we talk about is that often, the trauma responses are really just the brain and the body trying to protect itself, and we don't even know it's happening. And so some of the things that I talk to my clients about and the celebration clients about is, your body is often your first sign that you are in that reactionary mode and in that trauma mode. And so can you kind of talk about how those signs come up in the body and what happens?
Yeah, before I do that, I do want to, because you brought up a good point. When we go back to like thinking through trauma, is a lot of people associate trauma with PTSD.
Yep.
And just because you've had trauma does not mean you've had PTSD. And so I think that's why we don't acknowledge what's happening in our own body, because once again, we're saying, well, I don't have this, so then I don't have this. And so I just want to always be clear on that for people. It's something in my own life, that I assumed I had to have all these other symptoms in order for me to have experienced trauma. And even though my body was still responding in a way that was affecting me. How these things come up in our body, I hear from clients all the time, oh, I don't have triggers, I don't have trauma. And I was one of those individuals too. Like I experienced trauma as an adult through a marriage, and I would have told you that I didn't have anxiety. I would have told you that I didn't have trauma and that I didn't even have triggers. But what I like to explain is our body does four things to survive. It does a lot of things, but in terms of how it comes out of our body, it's called fight, flight, fawn, and freeze. So, fight mode is when inside of us, it doesn't mean we necessarily outwardly do this. Sometimes we do, but fight mode is becoming very angry instantly, being frustrated, wanting to scream, yell, kick, punch, whatever. Sometimes that does come out physically for people, but there's people that, for me, I have a fight response. I never put it on anyone, but I feel all those emotions inside. And it comes on instantly when I'm triggered. I didn't know that I was being triggered, but it's like, why is something creating this response like I'm in an actual fight? Like I need to have this kind of adrenaline, right? Flight response is we look for escapism. Either mentally we check out, we might get on our phones and disconnect, we might start doing something else if somebody's talking, or we're looking for an excuse in our head to leave whatever conversation we're in, or phone call or meeting to say, oh, actually, I have to go to this thing when that's not really what we have to do, or we're looking in the room of how fast can I get out of this room. That is our flight response. Our fawn response is we abandon all of our own needs to appease the needs of the person in front of us. So even though it's something that's not good for us or it's not really helping us in the moment, we're worried about just bringing that person back down to center. How I explain it in childhood for some of the clients I work with that are younger is if your mom or dad started kind of freaking out on you or yelling at you for something that really isn't appropriate, you find yourself not even wanting to try to talk through it or wanting to advocate for yourself. You just find yourself like, okay, what do you need? I'll go do the dishes. I'll do this. I'll do that. Like, what can I do? Right. You're now monitoring someone else's needs opposed to your own, when it's not appropriate. And then freeze is literally you feel stuck. You might have words in your head, you might know what you want to say, but your body and your words and all of it just feels like it can't get out and you become blank. And it's like you can walk away from something and go, why didn't I just say that? Or man, why did I not just tell them this, right? You just become completely frozen in the moment.
I think it's really it's interesting because what I love about the work that we both do is just helping bring the awareness of, these are just things we do and we don't even know we do them, right? So it's one of the ways that I compare it is it's like white noise. our brain is so used to it, we don't hear it anymore. We don't feel it anymore. And so, part of what I think is super exciting about what you do, and is this bringing it to the surface. This is not what your brain is designed to do. It's designed to do it in a world where we were in danger all the time. It's the evolutionary way the brain works. It serves its purpose, but our culture and our society no longer require it, but we're still doing it. And one of the things that you were just talking about that I think is a good example is all of us have had some level of unhealthiness in our lives somewhere along the way, and we get these reactionaries. And so it took me a long time to recognize of how my own trauma was affecting my son without me even knowing it. And so I didn't even realize how angry my voice was sounding. I thought I was sounding very calm like I am now, and he would hide under the table because he no longer feels safe. And so I think one of the things that you and I talk about that I think is super important is how we pass down this generational trauma, never ever wanting to, never even recognizing we're doing it, but it's just passed down from generation to generation. So one of the goals you and I always have is how do we break that generational cycle and just continue to build in the community for the next generation as well as ourselves.
Absolutely. And here's the thing, there's a couple things around that too, is this is all, you and I logically know this now, right? And we put it into practice. But for those of us who haven't gotten to a place or maybe an awareness, because what we're doing is bringing awareness, right? And that's what we did at one point is awareness. Like your son was such a mirror for you, right?
Yep.
Of like, wow, my own son is under the table. Like there's no gauge that you could have on yourself in that moment other than that. Like your son didn't go under the table any other time, right?
Right.
So that's the gauge. Not all of us always get that, right? And plus I would say you have an exceptionally profound son. Let's be real. He could probably coach us at this point. But
you could.
There's two things is, and like you were saying, there was a time our bodies needed to be in survival mode. And survival mode is very important for us, but it puts us in a primitive state, which means we actually cannot create decisions based outside of scarcity and survival, which is why we make these decisions that later on when our nervous systems are calm, we look back and go, why did I do that? Right? It's because your body thinks it's keeping you safe. The other thing is we get addicted to this. The cortisol, the dopamine, all of those chemicals, they can be good. And our body does initially respond to them as if they're good. But what ends up happening is we become addicted to those when our body is meant to be calm most of the time. We should be in a very regulated state most of our day. That cortisol, that fight, flight, that fawn, that freeze should only really happen when we are in immediate danger or need to be aware. Like, right? And there's corrective, like there's good anxiety. There's that, oh man, there's a car that's about to hit me. I'm going to move. I'm going to do all these things. But then our adrenaline comes down, our cortisol comes down, and our anxiety starts to come down. That's how it's supposed to work. When we stay in a state where we're constantly re-triggering ourselves and we're constantly in environments or decisions that put us in that, there's a whole line of health issues that actually happen to us. And this is why this is so important. We don't want to break our generational cycles. We don't want to pass this down, but also in our own long-term health, there's heart diseases, there's blood pressure, there's diabetes, there's autoimmune diseases that they have found. There's also mental health comorbidities that they've now found that when you calm down the trauma and really start working on that some of these other secondary mental health issues start to fade away. Because what's happening is your body is never getting a rest. So it's actually fighting itself. And it's constantly trying to repair something that really is not broken. It just needs to be rewired.
I think something that you brought up that I think is super important, because this is somewhere you and I mean, we always compliment each other very well, but I think this is especially is as we've gone our own journeys, one of the things that we realize is, and this is, I think, and just in case you guys don't know me, I'm a counselor as well as a brain coach. But the reason I'm mentioning that is the frustration that we have with counseling, you and I both, and for me that is a counselor, is that it is in a box. Right. And it's not the whole person approach, just like every other medical model. And so for the frustration piece is it's really like you're still dealing with the symptoms and not the whole person, because it's not one thing.
No.
Something you brought up that I think is super important is, the anxiety that we have affects the brain chemicals, and they don't just reset on their own. And a lot of us don't want to take medication. Like we want to be able, and if you want to take medication, that's okay too. But for
Absolutely.
people that want, we want to try something first. And so it really is about this whole brain body approach, and not oh, my brain works this way, my body works this way, my health works this way. We are one person, and they all work together. And one of the things that I think is really cool about the way you and I work together is, although we both function on brain and that's how we complement each other, trauma is just, it's not something that I do regularly. And it's not something that, I am the functioning brain coach. I am the one that goes, okay, let's look at what's going on in your life. Let's piece it out. Let's see how your brain's working. And then often what I do is that I end up then referring over to you, because I see there's all this underlying trauma that's still keeping them from being able to use the tools. And I think that's what the important piece is you can get the information all day long, but if you're in this constant reactionary mode, you can't use the tools you're given. Would you agree with that?
100%. 100%. And the reality is, even I think we all eventually really want to try to be in control of our own lives, right? In our own bodies. And medication is not bad. And I mean, I definitely believe it's there for, it's to help us when we're so needed of that, right? And I think it's not a bad tool, but as we know, a lot of times we have to switch medications because you're only supposed to be on a medication for 12 months. And then you have to go through that whole trauma of resetting through medications. And what if we worked on the real root cause of something and was able to alleviate that in a way that maybe we didn't need that medication, or maybe we didn't need it as much. And maybe after 12 months, we really could get off that medication. And that's the thing, is this is a way to do those things. It doesn't mean it doesn't mean you can't be, or it's bad. It's just,
Right.
there's always an underlying anxiety, when we don't know why we're doing what we're doing. And coaching, like you're saying, actually puts us in a place to be aware and do competency building and to put us back in the driver's seat. When counseling is not bad, as you know, you're a counselor. I've called you, like, this is, Maddie's helped me in my life, even as a coach. And I think any professional should be seeing someone or getting help, right? Because we're still our own whole bodies. But what's hard in trauma, and they've actually seen that talk therapy is the least effective, because what it's doing is it's putting you back in your traumas.
Correct.
And then it's really about you in the moment, like, okay, well, how did that make you feel? And what do you think you need? Well, when you're on an overload, how do you know what you need?
Right.
So where coaching doesn't put you back in those feelings, it starts to say, let's pay attention to your behaviors. Right. And how can we build these into competency? And what comes out of that is a place of safety where you as a client start to feel like, hey, I actually think now that I'm doing this work, I am triggered because I have fight mode because I felt unsafe. And anytime, and the things that make me feel unsafe is when somebody, treats me like I'm dumb. Because guess what? When I was little, my mom or my dad or used to always treat me that way. And I never felt like I was good enough. And now in any relationship, this triggers me. Well, now you own your trigger. The trigger no longer owns you.
Correct.
And that's the difference of coaching.
Well, and that's what I was going to say. And and I love both counseling and coaching, but what I really love about coaching is and so what I want to do is spend just a moment, because I think this is very confusing for people. I think coaching, there has to be a self-awareness of being able to understand where you want to go. And what I mean by that is that often with counseling, people just know they feel bad and they don't know why. And so part of what the excuse me, the experience is it's let's figure those pieces out, and then we can make the referral out. And so that's often what, then I refer over to you, Summer, because it's like, once I can figure out, here's how the brain's working, here's the emotional capacity for today, but we got to fix this underlying stuff so that you feel better faster. Because I am just, and there, everybody needs a different experience. Everybody's brain's unique. Everybody's
Absolutely.
emotions are unique. They all need different things. But what I know is that it's about you feeling better faster. And the best
Absolutely.
way that we can do that is help you think through it and get the brain working back so that you're back on autopilot. And then sometimes it's easier to kind of piece through. But something you said earlier that I think is super important and people don't understand this is that if you're in survival mode, which all of us have been for feels like a long time since COVID. Let's just talk about COVID. Your brain is your frontal lobe, your ability to reason, your executive function, your what I consider the mind, the conscious effort cannot work. It just flat can't. And so, what I love about what you do is helping people just get that survival mode, calm down so that you can start reasoning through and being able to see. And so, and I'll go back to my example, and I think this is perfect. I didn't have any idea what I was doing to my son. He was
Right.
going under the table and he was hiding and I'm like, what's wrong with him, right? But I was in reactionary mode. And so because I have been through all the counseling and coaching that I've been through, I was able to take a step back. And that's what I think is the difference is this, oh my gosh, something's not.
Yes. And
Right.
this is the thing is so in trauma, we're reacting. In health, we're intentional. It doesn't
Yep.
mean we're going to pick the best decision every time and intentional,
Correct.
but we're going to be able to step back and go, wait a minute, maybe I'm off on this. I do much better in counseling now because my nervous system's calm and everything doesn't feel like a personal attack. When I'm
Right.
in trauma, everything like I want to tell the counselor, you know what? No, you're just not hearing me. You're not
Yep.
listening to what I'm saying, right? So I love counseling, but I needed my tools and to calm my nervous system before I could
Yep.
even have somebody give me insight. So for example, the other day I called Mattie because I had a situation come up and I'm using all my tools, my nervous system's calm, and I'm like, you know what? Maybe I'm not reacting correctly. Maybe
Yeah.
I keep hitting a wall with this person in this relationship but maybe it's me. And it was I was able to, through counseling, then be able to be told, here's where maybe we're not doing what we're supposed to do, but here is where your validation is, right? Because we all want to be validated, but let's be honest, if we really want to be the humans we want to be, then we want to be validated the right way. And I think counseling provides that. It provides a way to understand in circumstances where there's no emotional, equity from the counselor into your life. But if we're not in a place to hear that, which by the way, if we're in survival mode, you're not. There's no
Right.
way. It's exactly what you said, Mattie. Like and actually what trauma does, it puts us in a negative loop because negativity technically can keep us safe. Now,
Right.
not safe the right way, but safe in a way of I can't trust this person. This person's out to get me, right? Because in our trauma, maybe trust is what's been broken, right? And so there's no way if you are in trauma and your nervous system isn't calm, are you going to fully be able to even get the benefits of counseling in the way
Right.
that you need it? So like you're saying, to really move through that in a healthy, fast way, right?
Right. Right. And one of the things I always say too then is I think part of what trips people up is coaching is not paid for by insurance. And so we're such on this medical model. And one of the things I'll say to people is, okay, but how much money are you spending? Have you been spending in counseling for so many years? And is it really going to help keep you from spending as much money in medication and just relationship issues and all of the things that we spend money, especially in the medical system, because all the things we're talking about we end up with high blood pressure, we end up with
Yeah,
migraines, just our bodies are going to respond. So in the long run, you end up spending less money
you do.
because but we're such a medical model culture that it's like people go, okay, but insurance doesn't pay for that. Well, there's a reason. It's because it's not a medical model system, and
No,
that's where we don't want to be part of that system.
we don't. And here's the deal is that if you think the reason you're better is because of someone else, are you ever gonna really feel better? Are you ever gonna have that confidence? And a lot of the work that coaching is empowerment. one of my biggest successes is when I work with a client and they have panic attacks all the time. I'll get a call. Can you do some somatic work? Can you do this? Can you do that? Right. And then all of a sudden I'm like, whoa, I'm not hearing from that person anymore. And
Right.
they say, well, you've taught me how to do it. And now I know how to do it. And I did it. It's like, it's not, coaching is not a scarcity model. Like there's plenty people that have trauma and there's plenty people that need resources with coaching. I think that you and I are both this way. Like we want to work ourselves out of a job.
That's correct.
I would love to be in a world that doesn't need coaching. And
Yep.
I don't think we're afraid of that. And then we could go on to the next big thing we want to do, right? But the goal is not for you to see me, and I know for you, Mattie, for you for years and years and years, right? We can do tune-ups, we can, do those kinds of things, but the goal is get you in, empower, put you back in the driver's seat, not for
Right.
us to drive it and for us to be the reason you're feeling better.
Right. That's beautifully said. This is why Summer and I work so well together, because we have the same brain cells.
We do.
So anything else you want people to know about what you do, Summer?
No, I just want to say that it's all really scary and we get that. And it's hard to believe after, and I think this is back to your medical model, is after years and years and years of doing all the things that you've been told to do, to feel like, well, how could this really help me, right? And we get that. But we both work with clients that it is working and we see it working, and everybody needs different approaches. Not that we're a one size fit all, but just to acknowledge that it is scary, it's hard, and it's disappointing after you've waited so long in your life to want to just be able to feel better, that it can't happen overnight. But I think what we're trying to share is that it can happen a lot faster than you think too.
I love that. I love that. So, if you guys want to both of us do a free consult, I call it a consult chat because consult sounds like I'm a doctor and I don't want to be a doctor. Yeah. So it's a chat just to kind of see.
I like chats too.
I do. I like to have some chat over coffee instead of, hey, I'm going to book an appointment, right? If you want to be able to either one of us, but especially if you're dealing with this trauma, you're curious about it, you're wondering, like, do I have trauma? Oh, sorry. My earbud fell out. This is the other thing that you guys get with us. You get real. Because I don't edit. So then just click the link on the consult chat and book a call. And super easy. It's on our website at celebrations.org. And you can chat with either one of us and see what works best. Now, the good thing about us as well is because we work so closely together and we know each other so well, is if I meet with you and I'm thinking, you really need to go see Summer, or vice versa, that's where we're going to head. So it doesn't, you don't feel like it's if you go to see Summer and you do a chat, you have to do a call with her. We are going to be, this is about you. This process is about you. It's not about us. And one of the things you said, I think that's super important, I want people to hear, is as a counselor, I can't tell you how many times I have heard stories of the disconnect that people have had with counseling and finding another counselor. And, it's just this journey. And that's why we want to make this journey as easy as possible for you, because we both have been there and we know it. And this journey is about you and your brain and your body. So Summer, thanks for hanging out with me today.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye.